Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and align them to biblical truth. I have a great episode for you today. I think it's going to be a little bit what I would call heavy in the sense of, we're talking about the black hole, the bottomless pit, whatever you want to call it, of immorality. And that means that we have to talk about some real things with culture and what people think may be good or okay to God, and it actually is sinful, but we're going to look at that from a biblical perspective. But first, I want to tell you about an amazing course coming up with online Christian courses that you're going to want to get in on. So a lot of parents have asked me, yes, you talk about apologetics resources, but do you have anything for kids? Do you know what resources we can use to teach our kids? Because I try to teach my kids, and what I've had to do is supplement a lot of the time because I don't find a curriculum that's actually where it can stand on its own 2 feet, so to speak. So here's the thing. Do you know the best-selling book, by Dr. Frank Turek and Dr. Norman Geisler, called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist? I think I've talked about this before. I had to study this book intensively to be able to go to the CIA, which is the Cross-Examine Instructors Academy, over the summer and be trained to speak on all things apologetics. And Frank is actually going to teach the class for adults through a live Zoom session. And at the same time, you can have your kids learn I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist at their level with me. And I'm currently writing the curriculum, and the class is set to launch in September. So it's a side-by-side. Again, like you can learn it with Frank while your kids learns it with me. Same concepts, just broken down at their level. And it'll be a great way for families to have conversations about evolution versus creation, the validity of the Bible. Why should we believe it? Are miracles possible? Does truth exist? Everything in a 12 weeks of instruction with videos, with questions and lessons for the entire family. And if you have a 2nd through 4th grade student, you can buy the workbook curriculum at Impact Apologetics. Just go to impactapologetics.com. Right now, that's available. And so this is a great homeschool curriculum. If you homeschool your kids, it's great for private schools, or you can do it after school with your kids, which is what I did. I'm not coming from a homeschool family. You get a lot of Christian people who are looking at homeschooling right now. And I think that that's great, but we've done public school. I've worked in a public school and I still taught my kids apologetics. So if you're that person and you're like, my kids go into public school, but I want to arm them, this is a great way to do it. Go to onlinechristiancourses.school, sign up for that, look it over. You want to get in on this. Okay. This is something that's going to be happening in the fall. So back to our topic of the day. A few weeks ago, the state of Maryland proposed to legalize abortion up to 28 days after birth. If it passes, the people of Maryland will vote on the proposed amendment in November of this year. Just this week, at the recording of this episode, the Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson was asked to define what a woman is, and she said she could not because she's not a biologist. Which, if I want to throw something in, if she says I can't do that because I'm not a biologist, she's already proving that through biology, you can determine male and female. Okay, so she's proving right there that male and female can be determined and proven through biology. But people aren't talking about that, Last week, I was on a field trip with my son, a couple weeks ago, and this is his first year in a private Christian school in the 6th grade. My other 2 boys went all through public school. And one of the moms on the trip talked about how, some things that are confusing to her right now in our society. She brought up her shock over the state of our culture, men wanting to become women, women wanting to become men. And then she said this, she mentioned the Supreme Court's decision to legalize same-sex marriage in 2015 during the Obama administration. And she said, I was like, okay, they deserve it. Let's give this to them. But now look at what's happening. And I said to her, that's because it's not about deserving and fair, because she's using these virtue words to excuse away the fact that they deserve and fair, to get married. And I said, because it's not about deserving and fair. I told her this. It's about changing the definition of marriage. That was the heart of that debate, that conversation. When you move the line of truth 1 inch, half an inch, a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch, think of the smallest fraction you can think of, you've entered into immorality. And that's what I want to talk about today. There's no rock bottom with immorality. Immorality is a black hole. It doesn't have a boundary. It doesn't have a stopping point or an end. It doesn't. And if you think that you can give or compromise on moral issues in some small way, and then it'll stop there, you'll be accepted and nobody will fight or argue about it anymore, then by the time you come to your rock bottom of moving that line, it's too late. So you cannot budget. Truth isn't ours to change. That's what I feel like people are missing also in the argument. Who are you to change the truth? Who am I to change the truth? We're to hold to the truth. We cannot change it. So for example, if you say, I'm for abortion if a woman feels that she can't take care of her child financially, and if her baby daddy leaves her because that wouldn't be fair to her baby or to her. But I'm not okay if they want to kill the baby in the 3rd trimester. That's taking it too far. My question is, why not? Why not allow them to kill the baby in the 3rd trimester? You already gave an inch on morality when you said it's okay because of finances or it's not fair to the baby. Why? The argument against abortion is that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, abortion is wrong. The argument doesn't give an inch. It doesn't give an inch on anything for any matter for any reason. Because once you budge on the truth, you've entered into subjective morality where the individual gets to decide when it's permissible to kill the baby. And guess what? Outside of truth, everyone's line is different. Your line might be the 3rd trimester, but the people in Maryland, their line is 28 days after birth. Once you start killing innocent human beings and passing it off as permissible because fill in the blank, rape, finances, my body, my choice, Christians don't adopt, and all of the other things that people give for the reasons they excuse away abortion, then anyone can move that line at any time for any reason because it's no longer objective, it's subjective. Okay? And that's because immorality is a black hole. There is no stopping point. It will always continue to be pushed further and further because Christians refuse to stand up and hold to the line of truth. So today we're going to talk about 2 things. How have we seen the bottomless pit of immorality in our current culture and where it's going? And 2, why is it the church's responsibility? Why are we placing blame on the church? Because that's where I'm putting it today, putting the blame on the church. And I'm going to explain that too, because again, that kind of sounds harsh. So let's get into the first one. How have we seen the bottomless pit of immorality in our current culture and where are we headed? Where are we going next? So I gave the example of abortion. When I first heard of the abortion debate, because remember, abortion was not legal in all states before I was born, and Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. So that means abortion was legal in some states, but not in all. And there is an abortion timeline, which I'll leave in the show notes. And it's actually from Planned Parenthood. So it's not a biased, towards a Christian worldview or anything like that. So this is what they say. In the 1880s, there were laws restricting abortion access to become the norm. So in 1880s, they were trying not to make abortion legalized and normalized. In 1910, abortion was illegal at every stage of pregnancy. In 1955, Planned Parenthood held their first conference to legalize abortion. In 1966, 9 doctors of San Francisco, of course it has to be in California, right? Known as the San Francisco Nine, were sued for performing illegal abortions. And then Planned Parenthood goes on to give reasons such as women dying from illegal abortions. That's why they were doing it illegally. That's why they wanted to push for legalization, because women were dying from illegal abortions. They were needing abortions because they were exposed to rubella. So they would, because you're exposed to it, let's abort the baby, could cause birth defects. So, your typical reasons. In 1970, New York became the first state to legalize abortion. There's another crazy one. Like, look at these states. It's the same states that are crazy now, California and New York. In 1973, Roe v. Wade, the infamous case of Roe v. Wade passed. In 1992, abortion was reaffirmed in the Constitution in the Southeastern versus Casey case. Per Planned Parenthood, they say that currently 80% of Americans want abortion to be legal. And I want you to put this statistic up against the one that says 65% of Americans claim to be Christian, while at the same time approving of the killing of innocent human beings. So make that make sense. Make that statistic make sense to people who claim to be Christians yet still condone abortions. And then let me say this: abortion is a hard line. Abortion is a hard line. You should not excuse it for any reason at all. It is the killing of an innocent human being. That's what abortion does. It kills innocent human beings. The black hole is where you see the progression of abortion since its legalization. Roe v. Wade wasn't about allowing abortions within the third trimester. Scientists have always debated over when a baby should be aborted, when they're viable. Some say before the first trimester. Some say viability and can now survive outside the mother's womb. Like once they can survive outside the mother's womb, you shouldn't be able to abort them. But they disagree on when that is. So now you have people that are saying, well, we can take it further, 28 days after birth. Did the judge in 1973 expect this to be the debate in 2022? I have a hard time believing that they did. I have a hard time believing that anybody in their right mind back in the day that they were trying to make abortion legalized thought of we were going to take it a month after birth, that you can still legally kill a baby. And for those who think abortion is permissible because of rape, did you ever expect that we would be still discussing aborting and murdering a child 28 days after birth? I don't think so. Because their bottom line was rape. If it's rape, then you can murder the baby. Well, when? When you first find out you're pregnant? When the mom's still debating that she's going to keep her baby or not within the second trimester? If she's still debating within the third trimester? At what point is it not okay anymore? Just because your bottom line is rape doesn't mean that somebody else's bottom line is 28 days after birth. Some people's bottom line on abortion is the first trimester, but it doesn't matter what your bottom line is. First trimester, third trimester, 28 days after birth, rape only. Because when you move the line of truth 1 inch, which is, it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. If you don't stop there, if that is not your line, you have entered the black hole of immorality and anything goes and nothing is considered immoral anymore. That's with abortion though. What about gender? I've talked before about feminism, but the feminist movement had women shouting from the rooftops that women are no different than men. Women can do anything men can do. Don't tell me I throw like a girl. That's offensive. But did the feminists of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 1950s, the 40s ever expect a male would enter into women's sports and completely crush the female competition? Because after all, there's no difference between men and women. Did feminists in the 80s dream that one day a man would sit in office of Health and Human Services for the Biden administration and win Woman of the Year? He's taking a woman's spot. Why is it evil for a man to be manly, but when he decides to tuck his junk, pardon my expression, and call himself a woman, then he's now considered a hero? Why is that mentality allowed into our culture without the church rising up and saying no and pushing back against it way back when? And here's the thing. I've talked about the feminist movement before. I'm not a feminist and I won't be one because I believe my worth and value is in Christ and I'm confident in that. I don't care if I throw like a girl. In fact, I like the fact that I throw like a girl. I like all girl stuff. And on another side note, when I was younger, I thought, man, it sucks to be a girl. We have to have, our monthly cycles and all this. And it's so much easier for a guy. I'd rather just be a man or be a dude, be a boy. I actually thought that when I was younger. Thank God that I never voiced that or that we didn't live in the culture that we live in today, because people would be like, oh, then you must want to be a boy. How about it's the struggle of hitting puberty and realizing what comes with that? So again, we have to say, where is our hard line? The hard line, even with feminism, is the fact that women are women and we have roles that God has given to us. And men are men and they have roles that God has given to them. And I can do my role very well. And there's some things within my role that a man will never be able to do. So now we have Supreme Court Justice nominee, a judge who can't make the most basic judgment of all: define a woman. Immorality is a black hole. You may say, what does it matter that women wanted the right to vote, climb the corporate ladder, and get equal pay as men? What is that immoral? No, it's not immoral. But the message costs more than women were willing to pay because women missed their inherent purpose. She is not the same as a man. She cannot do anything a man can do. And that is beautiful itself because there are some things women do that men cannot do. Women wanted out of the home and into the office at the expense of their families. And now men want into women's roles. Well, why not? When we tell them there is no difference between men and women, a woman looking for a position in the highest court confirms that this message is still plummeting down the pipeline of a black hole of immorality. And now we have people who are confused and transitioning from male to female and female to male, which, by the way, is a contradiction. Because if you say there is no difference between a man and a woman, but you want to be a transgender, you're saying there is a difference between a man and a woman because you're transitioning to the opposite sex. So now at the recording of this episode, the Biden administration has come out and wants to allow children to get puberty blockers and get their penises cut off and to go through these sex change operations at like the age of 5. And where are the parents? Because this is literally sacrificing our children on the altars of immorality, on our own pleasures and our own lusts and our own desires, when we don't step in as the guardians of these kids and let them know that they are made in the image of God, that God made them perfect, there's nothing wrong with them, and route them, because a lot of this is confusion brought on by the culture, which statistically 5-year-olds aren't asking to transition. I mean, they barely even know what their body parts are. So again, where does it end? Where does it end? You see, same-sex marriage, 2015, not even 10 years ago, was legalized in all of America. And now we're in 2022 talking about having little kids having sex change operations. Also, by the way, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson also confirmed that gender is biological when she said, I can't define a woman because I'm not a biologist. So again, just take note of this. She's saying biology determines gender. It proves right there the point. So my question is, we're not even thinking, we're not teaching critical thinking if we can't even spot that in her argument. Sexual immorality will never hit rock bottom. And it all started with sex outside of marriage. We get unwanted pregnancies, we get gay marriage, we get pedophilia, transgenderism, and the list goes on because we didn't stick to God's definition of marriage. So where are we headed? This summer, organizations are hosting sex camps for 11 and 12-year-old kids because they want them to be just as comfortable with a condom as they are with a Band-Aid. So guess where this black hole is headed? To your kids. So look, I'm not trying to hyperinflate this or scare anyone. I have 3 boys and one of them is the age of the kids going to this sex camp. But as a mom, as parents, we're the first line of defense for our kids. And I'll tell you, no one is going to teach my kids this trash and get them spiraling down the black hole of immorality. It blinds you to spiritual things. It's going our own way. It's fulfilling the desires of the flesh, but that's where it's headed. Kids are next in the sex craze. We already see this happening, especially this week with everything that they've been saying. So they're grooming our children on TikTok and YouTube, and they're going to make child porn and other things involving children legal slowly but surely. And we have to be watchful and know where we're headed and do something about it while we can. So why is this the church's fault? I know that sounds harsh to put all of the responsibility on the church. And I try to be careful how I talk about the church because the church is the bride of Christ. But not all who call themselves the church are of Christ. The world is going to be the world. And why are we so surprised when they continue to grow more and more immoral? And I'm guilty of this. I said before, and I've been saying this a lot lately, I can't believe we're disputing gender or something so obvious, right? I can't believe people are hosting sex camps for children. Like, what is going on. And it's so shocking and it's frustrating. And you just think, surely we can't get worse than this. We can't get worse than this. But why are we surprised? The world is dark. Jesus says that we are the light of the world, the Christians. Yet the church, and again, this is a generalized statement. So of course, I don't mean everyone in the church individually. I mean us as a global church, the American church mostly. But many in the church have compromised when it comes to a lot of these moral issues. We've moved the line of truth because we think if we give a little bit, people will like us better. But it's not true. For example, when is the last time you heard a message preached against divorce in the church? Divorce in the church is statistically no less than divorce in the world. The number one message I see on social media is how Christians need to be loving. That is what all the women influencers that I follow talk about. And honestly, this is where I feel like I kind of get mean and I don't want to be, or I may come off as critical and I don't want to be, but I'm tired of the goofy reels that these cheesy influencers put out there about quote unquote Jesus. I'm tired of the just be loving and chase your dreams and God will give you the desires of your heart. That is not the gospel message. It's not. So the number one message is that Christians need to be loving. They need to not be so harsh. There you go. Reason number one that this is the church's fault is because the church wants to sugarcoat everything. Christians try to make nice with the world. And if we say it differently or we say it nicer, then they'll accept us. If we do these fun reels where we tell people that God will give them the desires of their hearts, they'll accept us. No, they won't. They won't. They hated Jesus, and no one was nicer than he was. No one was nicer than he was. Jesus told us we would be hated by the world. Why are we trying to be accepted? We won't be. And plus, we're not the ones the world has to accept. We want the world to accept Christ. So it's the gospel message that will get them to accept Christ. Be nice is the thing you'll hear everyone saying. And I actually looked up some of the big name women's ministry leaders. And I'm not going to call them out on this because I'm not talking about false doctrine. I do believe calling people out on false doctrine, but I'm not going to do that on this because they're not teaching false doctrine. But I looked some of them up to see, are they talking about these big immoral issues? Are they addressing the issues of our culture? And they don't. They don't talk about Leah Thomas. They don't talk about Maryland and the abortion bill of murdering babies 28 days after birth. They're not talking about that. Why not? Because of the backlash. It is so much easier to talk about uplifting and encouraging and fun things. It's so much easier to tell everyone they're going to get a blessing. It's so much easier to say, oh, don't be, so hurt. God loves you. He'll rock you to sleep at night. But that's what the prophets in the Old Testament did too. Look at Jeremiah. Have you read the book of Jeremiah? He was the only prophet who warned God's people about the future judgment, and no one wanted to hear it. No one. Natasha Crane's going to be on my podcast soon, and this is one of her quotes from Faithfully Different. It's a great book, and we'll be talking about that. This was her quote from Instagram the other day. Secularism can readily accommodate a secular God who can require nothing, but not a specific one that requires everything. The question is, which God actually exists? What is Natasha saying? She's talking about how everybody wants to talk about God, but it's just a God who you can do anything, appeal to this God. He'll approve of anything because he loves you and wants to bless you. But if you talked about a specific God, like the God of the Bible, who does require, he requires everything, then we don't like that. So everybody has a God, but have we defined which God they have? That's why you can still talk about God in America and get away with it, but you can't talk about the God of the Bible. As soon as you start to identify specifically which God you're referring to by mentioning the Bible or Jesus, that's when you'll have the debate. Don't believe me? Do a social media experiment and post something about God and then post something about Jesus or the Bible. That's why Christian influencers and big name preachers can talk about a God who will bless and supply your needs and everybody will applaud. They're more in line with secularism because that's not coming from a biblical worldview. And that's why they don't want to talk about Leah Thomas and transgenderism and abortion and all of these other issues. They don't want to have the male-female debate. Frank Turek has said this: whatever you win them with, you'll win them too. If you win people to Christ with the message of blessing, they'll leave the church when they don't get blessed. If you win them over with a message of prosperity, they'll leave the church when they don't prosper. But if you win them to Christ with the message of the cross, they'll stay with Christ no matter the cost, because you won them with the gospel message. And in regard to this message of be nice, no one ever said that. No one has ever said, if you think about it, yeah, I gave my heart to God because someone told me I was a sinner and a really nice tone of voice. Has anybody ever said that? If you think being nice is all it takes, then the message of the gospel is lacking from your message. Now, am I saying we shouldn't be nice? Because some people are going to be like, you gotta be loving though, Shanda. The Bible tells us to love. I'm not saying you shouldn't be nice. Of course not. But when people say the church should be loving and the church should be nice, what they're saying is just take it easy on truth. Love and truth will always go together. Love and truth are not inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. I explained this in my episode titled Is Love Love? If you haven't listened to that one, check it out, and it's going to help you understand this a little bit better. So let me say this. If all you are is being nice and you are withholding truth, you are not loving. If you go to someone who will only tell you what you want to hear, you're not looking for truth. We can have compassion for the single mother who can't take care of her child while at the same time speak the truth to her. Help her, tell her to keep her baby. We can have compassion for the person who's struggling with identity and gender dysphoria while at the same time speak truth to them. We can control what truth we speak and how we love, but we cannot control the reaction of the other person. When we try to quote unquote be nice and tiptoe around the truth, we're trying to control the response of the other person, and that is getting in the way of them coming to God. And the other main reason Christians stopped influencing the world is because they don't know their Bibles. How can you speak truth if you don't know it? How can you uphold the truth if you don't read the Bible? You can't. You can't. So I want to wrap this up today by encouraging you to take a stand for truth. Like, take a stand for truth. The further society gets from truth, the more you're going to stand out when you speak it. Someone was saying to me the other day, like, you take on really hard topics and you always speak the truth. And honestly, sometimes I don't feel like I take on hard topics. I don't. They're common sense topics. They're topics of the day. They're just things that nobody wants to talk about. And when you address them with truth, which comes from God, it's grounded in God. God is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is. But the more you speak it, the more people think you're so radical and taking this big stance for truth. And I'm like, am I taking a big stance for truth? I'm just doing what God has called me to, and I'm holding fast to the truth because it's true. Thank God I love truth. But you can't love it and then not speak it. You can't love it and not uphold it. I was talking to a friend on the phone this morning, and she said what people don't realize is when they stay quiet on these issues because they don't want to take a stand. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to seem political. They don't want to seem unloving. They're actually giving their approval. If you're passive, you're just waving a white flag of surrender. Being silent is still taking a stand. You just haven't opened your mouth to do it. And you may not think it is, but it is. You're being passive. And while everybody else is facing the cultural things, the topics of the day that are confusing our kids, and you bow out of it and say, just let me be, you're just waving a white flag of surrender. And some may think, well, we have all different missions. Somebody told me that the other day. Well, not everyone's mission is to, speak the things that you speak on. I beg to differ. I beg to differ because Joel Osteen wants to just talk about good and uplifting things. He says, I'm a preacher who's not called to preach on sin. No one is not called to preach on sin. There is not one preacher who is not called to preach on sin. Because if you don't preach on sin, you're not preaching the gospel, because that's the whole reason we have the gospel message. You can't share the good news without the bad news. Some people, some of these women ministers who only want to talk about God healing your wounds, I get it. It's a safe zone. But even if that's the crux of your message, there are going to be times when no matter if you think that you're standing for truth, but you don't stand for these other things that are true, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. You're saying God's only called you to speak to people who are broken. We're all broken because of sin. You're never going to get away from it. So not everyone is meant to have a podcast. I agree. Not everyone is meant to post things on social media and use that as a platform. I agree. Not everyone's meant to write blog posts. Yep, I agree. But my rebuttal to making that, excusing people away from that is, what's the mission of the church? That's the real question. What's the mission of the church? Because if you are a Christian, you are part of the church. Isn't it to know God and make him known? We make God known when we stand up for truth. When the gender debate is happening, we say, no, God created them male and female. That's it. That's where we stand. There's only two options. You still make God known when you stand for truth, even if people don't like it. So are you part of the church? How are you standing for truth where you live? It doesn't have to be on social media or podcasts or YouTube or anything like that, but it better be coming out of our mouths. We better be passing this on to our children. I don't want my boys to be a casualty of culture. Heck no. God forbid when I stand before him one day and he asks me what I did with the 3 blessings that he's given to me. I hope I say everything I could. Everything that I could, God, to get them to know you, to stand for truth and to arm them with it so they were not a casualty of culture. If I can encourage you today, I would say that the light of Christ shines brightest in darkness. The world is pretty dark. It is. And sometimes I wonder, oh my goodness, what am I going to read on the news today? What am I going to hear about? And sometimes I step away from it. I step away from it because in my life, God is good and he's given me a family that I love. And when you look around at what's happening in culture, it can be disheartening, but I will not bow out of the fight. And actually, Paul tells Timothy to fight the good fight of faith. Are you in the fight? It gets tiring. The fight gets tiring because that's what fights do. You get tired of battling sometimes, but you don't remove yourself altogether or say, I'm never going to enter. You continue to fight. You ask God to help me muster up the strength to go another round. We're to be strong and courageous. We don't walk around defeated. The truth will stand. I always tell myself this, no matter what happens to me, Jesus comes back before I die. If I die before Jesus comes back, no matter what, God's word's going to go on with or without me. I hope it goes on with me, though. I hope I'm one to be able to take it and be a voice to others. So when I stand before him, because this life is short, but eternity is forever. When I stand before him, I can say, I fought the good fight. And I did whatever I could with what God has given me to pass that on. And if that's standing up for kids and for our culture and for truth, it will be worth it. It will be. You won't be liked, but you will be emboldened when you stand up for truth. And you'll be liked by some. There are people who follow me and say, thank you for speaking truth. It emboldens them. Ali Stuckey actually says it best, courage begets courage. And when I see other people being strong and standing up for the truth, it emboldens me even more to stand up for the truth. When I get a message saying, thank you for standing up for the truth, it emboldens me to stand up for truth. When I get ugly messages from people, sometimes all I want to do is fire back, and I usually ignore them. But sometimes I want to fire back because they don't know what they're talking about. But I don't step back. Don't step back. Don't bow out of the fight. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably continue to say it until I don't have a podcast anymore. You're not alone in this. God is with you, and you have the whole body of Christ, the remnant, the people who will stand for truth no matter what. We all have each other, and we need your voice. We need your voice. Don't raise the white flag of surrender. Don't bow out of the fight. Don't muzzle yourself. Don't put duct tape over your mouth. Speak truth. Stand for truth. Love the truth. Keep the truth. I'm telling you right now, God will be with you. You'll make a difference in culture. You will. If you want to know what your purpose is, it's to know God, make him known. However, in whatever way he's placed you in. So I hope that this, 1, fires you up to speak truth. 2, brings a little bit of reality to the black hole of immorality, that it won't stop. It's not going to stop. And if your hard line, in which it should be all of our hard line, truth is everyone's hard line. It's what we all have in common. But if you're like, gosh, this is going way further than what I would have thought, go back, make your line the line of truth, God's standard, and don't budge from there ever again. And stand on that truth, that hard line of truth, and speak it into culture and know what the word says. If you have any questions about this or anything else that I share, email me at hello@shandafulbright.com, and I'll catch you on the next one.